There's so many types of stress in our lives, and we can have one level of stress that seems very manageable in one context of our life, and in another, it may seem completely overwhelming. Um, and and then stressors can be of different duration. I mean, so stress is just a basket term for so many things that make us experience stress in some way, shape, or form. And the key is that not all these stressors are harmful. So the types that we generally have no sense of mastery, no sense of control, they're unavoidable, they're prolonged. Those are the ones that have a smoldering, low grade inflammatory effect on our body and are generally harmful. The stressors that are brief and intermittent, so for example, a public speaking event, a sports competition, those types where you can have that sense of mastery to a large degree, they're often deliberate, meaning that you are choosing to be in that situation. Those are the types that our bodies are actually adapted for. We can grow, we can get better at when we put ourselves in these situations. And it's more a matter of create the situation, but then create strategic recovery. I mean, that's really the key here because these are controllable. You can also plan strategically for some level of recovery where your body does the growing, the adaptation to the stress so that you become better at handling it. I think the key is that to be effective, meaning very creative and energized and motivated to do one's best work, you really have to create a foundation where your physical health supports your mental and emotional health and vice versa. Because what ends up happening at a biochemical level is that our cells don't thrive when we are sedentary. We incur, for example, damage to our mitochondria. There was actually a beautiful study that showed even in people who are healthy, meaning no diagnosable disease, just sedentary lifestyles was compromising their mitochondria, which essentially means that your body's ability to convert any food energy into energy that our cells can use in the form of ATP is compromised. So even if a person is eating the cleanest diet with, organic, whatever type of food, if the cells cannot convert that to energy, your cells can't do their work. So the cells in one's brain, the neurons, can't create that same level of endurance and creativity. So I think that in it's really a way to support your ability to do the best work, and they go hand in hand. Um, the key, though, is you don't have to necessarily carve out a big chunk of time out of your work. There have been studies showing that if on the hour you just do a minute of squats, that can be the equivalent of that 30-minute walk. So it's finding everyday things that work with your lifestyle, and they can often just be short bursts. I mean, there was another beautiful study that showed just intermittent bursts of physical activity, vigorous intermittent lifestyle physical activity that goes by the acronym VILPA. People who did those 3 times a day for 1 to 2 minute intervals. So, like running up a flight of stairs, running to catch a bus, just 3 times a day over time had a 50% lower mortality rate from heart disease. And so I think it's important to just, not throw out the baby with the bathwater, and that these small intermittent bursts of what our body perceives as stress are incredibly impactful. The common thread behind all the lifestyle factors that I encourage in the book, as you just mentioned, eating plant phytochemicals, exercising, particularly with intervals of vigorous activity, using heat and cold, intermittent fasting and a circadian pattern, and challenging mental and emotional situations. The common thread is that these are all factors that were inherent in the lifestyle of our ancestors. They are the types of stressors to which our bodies have adapted, and our genome has this conserved sequence called vitagenes, which is short for vitality genes. These genes are activated when we are in hard situations. Essentially, they help us survive. And they're so critical that they've been handed down generation after generation. We share this conserved gene sequence with other life forms, plants and animals. I mean, these are so vital to us as a species surviving and thriving. So the common thread is that these stressors activate the expression of this gene sequence. And this gene sequence ramps up our body's natural ability to fight disease, to help us live longer. For instance, they raise our antioxidant capacity. These are the genes that help us repair proteins in our body through heat shock proteins. They repair DNA. These are genes that help us recycle damaged components, increase our mitochondria. So the way I view it is that in our everyday life, there is so much harm happening to our cells from pollutants, from processed food, from being sedentary. And our bodies have the inherent ability to repair a lot of this damage. But because we have kind of worked out of our lifestyle in the last 200 years, our need to be exposed to this type of stress, we are not activating our ability to heal the daily damage that we're experiencing. So our bodies are out of balance, and that's accelerating the chronic disease epidemic, which is not just diabetes and heart disease and cancer and Alzheimer's, but also emotional aspects of our health like anxiety and depression. And so the commonality here is that these are stressors that our bodies need to activate our natural defenses. And by kind of introducing all these conveniences over the last 200 years, there's a cost to that. And, from one end, we've benefited tremendously, right? Life expectancy is much better now. I mean, the last century, it's increased 27 years. So there's no question we've benefited from refrigeration, from food preservation technologies, and the whole gamut of, machines and computers that have entered our lives. But at the same time, there's a cost to pay for what we've removed out of our life, which is, we live in thermoneutral environments where we aren't exposed to heat and cold. We can access food 24/7, and our bodies just weren't designed for that. We now, of the 30,000 edible foods that are out there, we cultivate 150, and only about 30 of them make it to our plate. So we've removed the need to subsist on a variety of different foods, particularly plant food. So we've kind of worked these ways out of our life, and it's taking a toll. And this book is really a kind of wake up call, a bit of a course correction, saying, what is normal for our physiology is not our current life. We now have to reintroduce what is normal and call it an intervention when the reality is what we're doing today is the abnormal intervention and the outcomes are not good. That's the question we all have, right? How can we do quick things that are high impact? And I would say the probably things that we can all do are, the first is, add a fruit or vegetable today, like to whatever you're eating. You don't have to remove anything, avoid anything, just add. And that's simply because the addition of anything that has plant phytochemicals your body perceives as a microstress because plants make these phytochemicals as a natural pesticide and they ramp up our natural defenses. Right now, only 1 out of 10 Americans is eating the recommended 5 fruits and vegetables a day. So there's a huge gap between, what we can do in reaching our potential for health. So that would be like a super simple thing, whether you like a carnivore diet, whether you are vegan, I don't care what diet you currently follow, but just add a fruit or vegetable. The second we've already touched on, but just try and get some burst or interval of vigorous activity. Even if you don't have time, just think about the 1 or 2 minute thing you can do. If after our conversation, if you can get up and just do squats, and do that for like a minute and then go to the next thing you have to do, like just incorporating these short bursts, I think there's a lot of utility to simply doing that. Or if you're walking your dog this evening, instead of walking at a continuous pace, at least 1 or 2 days a week, walk in intervals where you will walk fast for 3 minutes, get your heart rate up, and feel like you're at a brisk pace, and then slow down for 3 minutes, catch your breath, then walk again at a pretty brisk pace where it feels vigorous, where you can't really comfortably have a conversation. And you can get out maybe a few words, but not really have a sentence like conversation. Simply walking in intervals versus a continuous pace can increase your cardiorespiratory fitness, reduce cardiometabolic risk factors like blood sugar, waistline, etc. So just a simple change like that can make a difference. Heat and cold. So you mentioned already opening up your dishwasher and getting that steam, which does feel good. Um, Adding 30 seconds of cold at the end of your morning shower, taking a hot bath at night, somewhere between 102 to 104 degrees can activate a lot of the same responses as sauna. And with mental challenges, the things that really matter to you are the key when you're choosing a challenge that's mental or emotional that helps you actually strengthen the connections between the neurons in your brain, helps with the plasticity, which is essentially rewiring of your brain in a way that makes the brain more resilient and builds cognitive reserve. So things that are rewarding, that matter to you, that align with your belief system, that make you feel like you're contributing to a greater good or something bigger than yourself. These are the types of stress that release a profile of hormones and neurotransmitters that are so much more complicated than a simple like cortisol, adrenaline that everyone's familiar with. You release health promoting chemicals as well with these challenges. For example, you release serotonin, which gives, is the joy, happy hormone, if you will. Oxytocin when we bond with another human being. We release dopamine when we're doing something rewarding. And these hormones and neurotransmitters actually mitigate your cortisol level. They help us become more resilient to stress. So it's a little counterintuitive. I mean, that is the entire paradox that we can develop resilience through stress, and taking action in this way is an antidote to the chronic stressors that we can't control. I mean, that's really the type of medicine I practice. It's how do we leverage our lifestyle in a way that reduces our reliance on medication. And the advantage to that is we are making ourselves healthier. So, this is a systems biology approach to health. I mean, you are taking the smallest unit in our body. I mean, we have 30 trillion cells. And if you make the smallest unit the healthiest and you build on that, you are reducing your risk of many diseases, not just one, right? They're the common pathway to all the chronic diseases. For example, the ones we've mentioned, the diabetes, the heart disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, even things that are common symptoms, digestive problems, irregular menstrual cycles, brain fog. The root is impaired cells. So, to me, approaching things through lifestyle is really a way to get at the root of what is making us sick, what is making us feel poorly. And no pill can ever have that same impact. I mean, pills generally affect one pathway in the body. These are all so intertwined in how they work. Our genome was essentially built around the biggest threat to us as a species, which was, starvation or injury. So we have incredible mechanisms and like thousands of genes that respond to metabolism. And no pill can ever come close to the way that our lifestyle can impact our health.